Why do I get blamed for everything? Bless you. Bless you. Right, ready to start? Welcome everyone to the Licensing Committee Regulatory on the 22nd of October 2025 at 10 o'clock, just gone. Just quickly whip through the norm. So apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we have from councillors Beatty, Bayes, Birch, Fitzpatrick, Housden, Leith, Ringer and Taylor.
Thank you very much. I believe we have no public questions and statements.
No, none received, Chair.
Over to the minutes of the last meeting, as well as the two subcommittees, I believe, on the 9th of July, the 14th of July and the 24th of September 2025. Is everybody read those? Are they happy with those? Is there any issues? If not, so can I have a proposer and a seconder, and everyone's happy with that? Yep. Declarations of interest. Do we have any of those? No. No items of urgent business.
None received.
So we go straight on to the 6th, which is street trading policy on the 2025 to 2028. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for considering the street trading policy for 2025 to 2028. The revised street trading policy is being developed following a full review of existing arrangements and was last formally updated in 1989. The new policy reflects current trading practices, legal requirements, and community expectations, and it is designed to support local enterprise while safeguarding public safety and amenity. The key objectives of this policy were to modernise it and make it clearer. It's been rewritten in plain English with clear guidance for applicants and our enforcing officers. We want to encourage economic development, so urban centres such as Cromer, Fakenham, North Walsham and Sheringham are going to be designated as consent streets to encourage responsible trading and to support our vibrant town centres. We're looking at public safety, and therefore streets near schools and narrow thoroughfares are designated as prohibited or consent streets to reduce the risks to pedestrians and traffic. We want to apply fairness and consistency in our policy and provide clear criteria for granting and refusing consent. We want to ensure transparency and protect existing businesses from unfair competition. And legal compliance aligns with Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982 and strengthens our enforcement powers. A full public consultation was undertaken and feedback has shaped the proposed street designations and policy improvements. Our enhanced powers will include seizure of goods and prosecution for illegal trading. We hope to support net zero goals through sustainable trading practices. Equality and inclusion has been assessed through an equality impact assessment and completed with mitigations in place to ensure accessibility and fairness. And the policy operates on a cost recovery basis, with fees to be reviewed in September 2026. The recommendations to the committee are to approve the revised street trading policy for 2025 to 28, with effect from the 1st of April 2026, to recommend its adoption by full council, and to authorise officers to implement the policy and update associated materials and systems. Thank you. I'm now opening the floor to any questions.
Do we have any questions for Elisa? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank the officers for getting through this body of work and for the previous two huge amounts of work that they've done this year. I know I set this ball rolling some long while ago, and I'm glad it's finished up in the back of the net. So thank you very much, and I'm very happy to propose.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to second Councillor Fisher's proposal. Well, just a few points really. I'm looking at clause 5.2 on page 17, and it says that ongoing staff resources will be required. Are we confident that our staffing at present is adequate? I take it that these alterations won't involve any additional resources being required. And I just look at the end on page 18 where under financial risks, I presume, do we have some contingency for any unplanned costs, or is that already factored in? I presume that we don't need any additional reserve to deal with that. And finally, I understand that there are license street provisions as well as distinct from consent street provisions. So I just wondered if that was in any way relevant to this paper, if we could just slightly educate my brain on the difference between the two.
No problem at all. I'll start with your first question, which was about 5.2, enforcement and compliance. Illegal trading, so unlicensed trading, would be covered by the council's general overall fund, because unlicensed traders, we can't, although we would enforce and take to court, we can't take that money from the licensing fund. So we would hope to encourage compliance, and where we have compliant traders who are in breach of their own license, so they are licensed but not trading correctly, we have grounds to cover that, and the enforcement would be covered from the licensing pot, which is it's cost recovery, and therefore that would be reflected in future fees. If there was a lot of compliance to be carried out, we would have to increase fees because we would have to increase resource, but we always encourage compliance through conversation, education, and try to help people to keep their license rather than enforcing on them for non-compliance where we can. That's what we would aim for.
Would be rectified in the review next September,
Correct.
Presumably. Yeah, okay.
Correct, that's 5.2. Regarding the financial risk, sort of in the same sort of answer applies. So if there was, if we were enforcing on illegal trade, it would come from the corporate pot. That would be no different. In fact, I think by extending quite extensively our consent streets, we've covered a larger area under our compliance regime, and we would hope that we would have less reason to enforce from the council pot overall. And your other question was around licensing versus consent and prohibited. So a licensed street would allow people to hold a license, sort of very similar to a premises license, in that it's an ongoing sort of license that they could therefore trade under. With a consent, we allow them for a period of time to trade in that period, and then we can review it year on year. And then prohibition is flat. There's no trading there at all. So we've taken the view that we will offer just the consent and the prohibited over a licensed street, which can be very difficult for a council to enforce and gain compliance because of the longevity of the license.
Thank you. I also would like to say this is an amazingly good piece of work. It's so wonderfully clear and understandable, and I commend you for that. I've just got a couple of, nothing major questions, silly questions really. On page 28, it talks about trading adjacent to business premises. The council may waive individual consent for established business premises who display their wares outside their trading address. And I do know that this is a sort of common practice around. And my question is, would it apply to just the businesses who've been doing it historically for years? And what about if the business next door is doing a similar thing? Would they be able to trade their wares outside as well? And would they need to make a separate application for that? So do you want to do it? And I'll come back with the next one.
Thank you, and thank you for your kind comments. They're very appreciated. Regarding trading adjacent to business premises, it would apply to all businesses, I think, who are established trading as a business legitimately. We don't want to prevent the long-standing history of people displaying their wares outside of a shop, which is part of the fabric of North Norfolk, especially in narrow thoroughfares. We have historically, greengrocers and people who are trading outside. If we had a blanket ban on that, I think those businesses would be negatively impacted, and we are seeking to encourage economic development. So yeah, that it would apply to everybody, though we have to be fair and consistent in the way we apply our policy.
Thank you. Yeah. On page 37, I note that the revised policy obviously encompasses many more streets. And do you consider this is a much more suitable and exhaustive list than existed previously? And does it cover almost all of the roads in each of the towns now? And also one other side question to that, if I may, on table 2, I know that there's several areas were going to be prohibited where there's a narrow main thoroughfare and then it's consent. And I just wanted an explanation. Sorry, I finished your question. I wondered if there was any concern about it changing to consent and how that's viewed as regarding safety.
Thank you very much for your questions. The table 2 is, we feel, a good further spread from what we had before. I think it would be fair to say that because it hasn't been reviewed for so very long, it was somewhat lacking, and it was impacting on our ability to enforce on illegal traders in those areas. And obviously there's a public interest test to be applied when we're going to go down the route of enforcement, particularly because it would eat into council funds and it can be very costly to enforce on a trader. These extended boundaries have been put in place with input from parish councils, town councils, plenty of other people involved, and we do believe it represents good coverage. We did have the option to designate the whole of North Norfolk as consent. What we found from the Institute of Licensing is that is very often quite costly to enforce, and in some cases it's disproportionate to the trading that might occur. We don't have significant levels of illegal trading within North Norfolk, and so to apply the whole of North Norfolk as a consent area would just probably be an overkill. With regards to the consent, where it was prohibited and we've changed it to consent, that's a really good question, and a lot of thought did go into it. So originally, when we had the first information back on our preliminary research, we did go with what was suggested, that it was prohibited. But in doing so, we realised after the consultation that that would prevent legal compliant businesses who are paying rates from displaying their wares if we applied it as a prohibition, and that's why we changed it to consent in those areas. Consent allows the council to decide on a case-by-case basis.
That's a very sensible decision. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Whittington.
I just wanted to say that I think the decision on consent in the town centres is really helpful, because, you know, our independent retailers, which the majority of our town centres are small independent businesses, when someone does, as we have had in Sheringham, rock up on the high street with their horse box and want to sell coffees and blackjacks, etc., you know, it is a smack in the teeth for them when they're paying high rates. So, you know, I think the community would very much appreciate that strengthening in effect.
Fisher, and we have a secondary, Councillor Brown. Is everybody happy to support this? Okay. So we shall move on to the licensing fees and charges 2026-2027. That's for you, Elisa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, again for considering the licensing fees and charges for 2026 to 2027. A review of the licensing fees and charges has been undertaken to ensure compliance with statutory cost recovery requirements and to reflect actual service delivery costs. The revised fees cover a range of licensing activities under environmental health, including taxi and private hire licensing, animal welfare licensing, skin piercing, sex establishments, street trading, and mobile homes licensing. The key changes are for taxi licensing, significant fee reductions due to a surplus in the taxi licensing fund and recalculated costs based on 24 to 25 data. Street trading, a simplified fee structure with redundant charges having been removed. Animal licensing has been adjusted for cost recovery with investment in officer training to meet increased demand. Mobile homes, revised fees supported by an update on mobile home fee policy, and primate licensing, which is a new fee introduced in line with legislation enforceable from April 2026. Fees set by central government remain unchanged. The proposed fees are benchmarked against neighbouring authorities and are designed to be fair, transparent, and legally compliant. Implementation is recommended from the 1st of April 2026, with delegated authority to officers. The Licensing and Appeals Committee is asked to approve the revised fees and charges, excluding those requiring Cabinet approval, endorse the updated mobile home fees policy, and recommend adoption by Cabinet or full Council in line with legislation. I now open the floor to any questions.
Councillor Whittington.
My question was about section 5 on the risks. And again, it's similar to Councillor Brown's previous question on risk. Can you explain that to me a little bit? I wasn't quite sure. The governance risks to do with scrap metal, such as scrap metal licensing, requiring executive approval, not licensing committee. Incorrect governance route could invalidate decisions. Are we in the position where we have an incorrect route, or are we in the right position? That's what I didn't understand from that point.
Thank you for the question. I understand why you've asked that question. So there are two pieces of legislation. There are two routes for adoption of a fee, and they are set out separately in legislation. Scrap metal is entirely an executive function rather than full council, and so the decision has to be shown on the minutes to be made at Cabinet by a meeting by Cabinet.
So will this then go to Cabinet for a decision on that side of it, will it?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Boyle.
This is just a simple one, looking at the on page 58, environmental health and the taxi licence fees. The proposed change for 26-27 for, we're looking at private hire vehicle licence. It says the last line of that is new or renewal valid for 5 years, and it's 0. Is there I'm sure there's a really good reason for it, but I was just burning to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a really good spot. So we have not had anyone in post to review the fees for quite some time. And now that it's being done, until this moment, the licensing fund is kind of circular. Any money that we generate has to go back into it, and it keeps recirculating. Where we've had a surplus, it's been carried forward until someone reviewed the fees. And that's resulted in a £50,000 pot over the taxi licensing fund, which is applied over 5 separate pots. One of those is the operator licensing for private hire operators, and that had a £10,000 surplus. And because our costs are very low, because we have very few operators, when we split out the cost and took away the surplus, there was a minus charge. And so we cannot charge going forward because simply we would just be gaining a further pot increase in the surplus. And because that surplus is now been applied, is free for a year.
Thank you very much. That explains that one.
Anyone else? No? Can I have a proposer then, please? So if we have Peter as a proposer, Councillor Whittington as a seconder, is everyone happy with that? Thank you very much. We move on to exclusion of press and public, which we have neither of. To consider and exempt matters arising from the public business agenda, which there is nothing of. So I close the meeting at 23 minutes past 10.